WestchesterTalkRadio.com. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative, and we are made possible by our good friends over at Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities right through April of 2021. Also by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis and Hightower Westchester. At Hightower, they manage your wealth to a fiduciary standard. And White Plains Hospital. Over at White Plains, we say thank you to our heroes for all they've done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Here we are, about a quarter of the way now, almost into the new year of 2021. This is the Sports Report, and on the Sports Report, we look at a variety of sports topics and issues, from talking to legendary sports figures around Westchester to delving into what's going on topic-wise. Like we've done a lot about high school sports this season here, this school year, and whether or not they should be held and when they all got the green light to go, like the high-risk winter sports recently. We talked to you about that. We talk about issues, too, affecting the Westchester and the lower Hudson Valley sports community. Now, one issue is the emergence of a variety of different kinds of sports performance centers and methods, and what's best for you, what's best for maybe your student athlete at home. With us today here to talk sports performance, we have a trio, a variety of experts from a number of different fields in this discipline of sports performance. They are Michael Fosina. Michael Fosina is the president of New York Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital in Bronxville, and also a New York Presbyterian senior vice president. He is chairman of the American College of Healthcare Executives, member of the Delaware College of Health Sciences Advisory Board, plus a one-time congressional fellow who serves on several boards and has received numerous honors throughout his distinguished career. Mike Fosina is a lifelong resident of the city of New Rochelle, the Emerald City. Mike, we welcome you. Also, we have with us Jason. He goes by Jay Hutchings. Jay is a 15-year fitness industry background. He is what he has 15 years in the fitness industry, his background covering all areas of personal training, member experience, team leadership, and both for personal, business, and corporate exercises and needs. Whatever you need, Jay has it for you. He specializes in performance and also movement-based training for all athletes, from the weekend warrior to top-notch professionals. He also specializes in personal and career performance as well, too. And we welcome our good friend here at Westchester Talk Radio, Mario Scarano. Mario Scarano, one of the most distinguished sports people around the county of Westchester. All he has done throughout his career in the sports world and universe. He's a former director of health, physical education, and also at the White Plains and New Rochelle Public Schools, performance too in the areas of health and physical education, the athletic director. He was at White Plains and New Rochelle and was the athletic director for a time about 5-6 years ago over at Woodlands High School in Greenburgh there, helping to revive the athletic program over at Woodlands. Mario is currently the community engagement coordinator at the New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute, Columbia Orthopedics in Scarsdale. And Mario, we welcome you to Westchester Talk Radio as well, and great to have all of you guys here. I know a long introduction, but we have to cover everybody's credit and give everybody credit for the things they've done throughout their careers. Give credit where credit is due, as my mother used to say. Now, we're going to begin with you, Mike Fosina. Mike, tell us what New York Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital in Bronxville is all about, and why should someone choose your facility above and before any other facility in this area?
John, thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having us on your show today. This is a great opportunity for all of Westchester. Why Lawrence and Columbia doctors over everybody else? Well, one of the strategies of New York Presbyterian many years ago was to bring the care of New York Presbyterian and Columbia doctors to the local community, to make it easier and more convenient for the residents of Westchester.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there. You said Columbia doctors. How did they get involved in this?
Columbia doctors and New York Presbyterian have a lifelong affiliation agreement. So our Presbyterian hospitals get their physicians from both Columbia doctors and the Weill Cornell Medical Center. So we have New York Presbyterian has 2 top 10 medical schools in the country that work with us. And that's where our doctors come from, either Columbia doctors or the Weill Cornell doctors.
So I'm going to point out you can't get any more top-notch than this.
You cannot. We believe that we're the number 4 ranked hospital in the country with 2 top 10 medical schools. We can cover anything and everything that any patient needs. And the goal of and strategy of our president and CEO, Steve Corwin, who, by the way, grew up in Westchester, was to bring the care of our institution to the local community. And how do we do that? Patients don't have to go to New York City for care. We can come here, they can see our doctors, and our doctors will make the decision of whether or not they need to be at the academic medical center in the city or not. So the goal is we're increasing and expanding access to our top flight physicians and surgeons in Westchester for the residents of Westchester, to make it easier for them and for their families. And that's what we've been doing at Lawrence for the past 5 years. And it's something that we are uniquely qualified and the only hospital in Lower Westchester is capable of doing that. We do have a New York Presbyterian hospital up in Peekskill. It's our New York Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. So between the 2 of us, we can cover the landscape of Westchester for New York Presbyterian and with our partners at Columbia Doctors.
Now, back in the mid-'80s, this evolving world of sports science began to emerge. I remember LA Rams running back Eric Dickerson wore these big goggles, and they were kind of stylish back then, under his helmet. And I wear glasses, which sometimes I don't wear anymore. My eye doctor told me back in the 80s, you're one of those people, I think your eyes are going to improve through the years, and they kind of have. So sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Here they are right here. But back then, I wore glasses all the time, and I was very active athletically. And I was a tough player in whatever sport I competed in, so I had a lot of injuries, unfortunately. And I looked for a way to protect myself. I had an eye injury at one point, too. And I saw Eric Dickerson wear these goggles. I said, that's the coolest thing. Next day, I ran out and got a pair, the exact same pair, paid hundreds of bucks for them for myself. And I still have these goggles to this day. And they are the sturdiest things I've ever come across since 1983, since the fall of '83. So this is when sports science emerged. I look at it like that. Eric Dickerson's goggles gave us the beginning of where sports science is today. Over at the hospital, you've become involved with sports science. How did you pick this to get involved with, looking at this as the wave of the future and knowing this is something you had to be part of?
Well, we look at it as we're working with Columbia Orthopedics, and we have team physicians for multiple colleges and high schools up to and including the New York Yankees. So Chris Ahmad is a team physician for the New York Yankees. And when I was working with the chairman of Orthopedics, Bill Levine, and Chris Ahmad about building orthopedics in Westchester, one of the things that they raised is that we need to really get into human performance. So we needed to get into sports performance. And we wanted to build a location that had everything, that had exam rooms for our doctors to see patients who potentially have an injury. They can go in and see our doctors, that we have physical therapy there. So if they needed rehab, they can rehab there. But also, and most importantly, we wanted to have an opportunity to allow the local residents to work out and prepare for their upcoming season. So it allowed us to provide a full scope of services in Westchester for those patients. And what we did is we took advantage of and negotiated with Exos to be their exclusive provider in the local community. They are a national company and they are known for this. And if you ever watch the NFL recruits on HBO, you see them running by the Exos sign all the time. So they are working with the professional athletes, not just in football and baseball, but also in the top tier Division I college athletics. So we want
every sport too, by the way. You see them work with soccer, with lacrosse, with field hockey, you name it. Exos does it. So it's not like they just narrow focus on one area. They cover every area.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're starting to do. And we're building that program in our Sports Performance Institute on White Plains Road, as you said, over in Scarsdale. And so we're able to developed that relationship with Exos, and we're fortunate enough to have Jason join us as the lead over there to really help us develop the program. So we work with Exos. So what kind of equipment do we need to have in there? What size space do we need to have in there? So we really thought through, how do we build sports performance in the local community?
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to do that. And Jason been a great addition. And then we added Mario and he'll talk about what he's going to do. But this has really been an important service line for us, an important program for us, and we believe the right program for the Westchester community.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mike and Jay both, I'm going to throw this over to Mario for a moment. I think you would agree. Mario, you remember the days as an athletics director where your coaches, I'm sure, would tell their student athletes who played for them, let's say somebody played for the softball team. The softball coach would go say, you know, Coach O'Donnell, Ted O'Donnell, maybe he'd go say, go play other sports too, because you get to use with other sports parts of your body that you may not use in softball. And who knows, that may come in handy running the bases, for example, one day if you compete for the track team, for example. If you run at the Laux games, you know, that'll help you maybe run the base paths a little bit better. And I think, Mike and Jay, this goes hand in hand with Exos working with every sport, not narrow focusing on one sport. Mario, that was kind of the way high school coaches work, correct? Get involved with everything, with every sport possible if you can. Play all 3 sports seasons if you can. And then here with what you're doing right now with Exos and with the hospital, you can branch out into every area.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, during my time growing up, it was very, very typical to see an athlete, an outstanding football player, all of a sudden go and play basketball in the winter, right, and possibly another sport in the spring. But what's happened in the last 10, 15 years, they've started to specialize. And once they started to specialize, you've got more kids now training outside of school at the number of different facilities, very similar to ours. But ours, I think, is so unique and so different. It literally connects with the healthcare system, which becomes a very, very important piece when kids do get injured in a sport. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's. I honestly believe that the vision that Michael had for the program here at New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute is really, you know, it's very visionary. It excites me to no end, because there's so much that the athletes can gain by being here, whether it be through a bridge program, which I think will be explained a little bit later, or just the training that takes place, or what Michael was talking about. We have 14 team doctors here that specialize in sports medicine. They take care of all patients, but they specialize in sports medicine. So an athlete that gets injured, there's no better place to come than to our facility here. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think Jason can elaborate a lot more on the fitness and training piece.
Jay, we'll have you do that in just a moment. Mario, I want to follow up and talk about how, like you said, when you and I went to school, guys played 3 sports, and I look at so many pro athletes or even college athletes. I check this and I track many an athlete. What other sport did they play along the way? You'll find that a star football player played basketball. He played baseball. Yeah. He ran some track. Maybe he threw the shot put, for example. Maybe a hockey player played lacrosse along, like Colin Blackwell on the Rangers now, who's become, in a short period of time, one of their best players, hockey player, but he was a great lacrosse player growing up too. Or Jim Brown, NFL Hall of Famer, was one of the all-time high school and college lacrosse players, one of the all-time greats of all time at Manhasset High on Long Island and at Syracuse University too. Now, within the last 10 years, and we see this, all the specialization, we see colleges signing kids to letters of intent, to letters of agreement when they're 7th graders, 8th graders in lacrosse and field hockey and basketball. And I'm going to say this, first of all, that sometimes either side gets out of that agreement along the way. Secondly, I'm going to say, how would a school know they want that 7th or 8th grader or 9th grader 2 or 3 years still down the road, or that student athlete would still want that school? But separate of all that, if that 7th or 8th or 9th grader signs with Syracuse, signs with UCLA, et cetera, and they know that's where they're going to be down the road, a few years down the road, they have to train the right way to get there to make sure that agreement stays in place, especially on the end of the school. And that's where all of this works into about developing and specializing athletes in one specific area, I would think. Now, Jay, Mario asked you to pick up on some of the performance methods and techniques. Go ahead and do that for us and tell us over at the Exos Center where you are in Exos Sports Science with what you do. How does this help the student athlete or any athlete, whether it be, like I said, the weekend warrior, or maybe if Aaron Judge of the Yankees walked in with Dr. Chris Ahmad one day and said, hey, Jay, go to work on me. How does this all work and fit together? Because somebody like me, who was a weekend warrior, and I got all the bumps and bruises and aches to prove it all these years later, basically, how is that going to work for me as well as it might work for Aaron Judge? And I'm not trying to compare the two. I don't want my father to hear this because he'd burst in and have something to say about that. Or like he once told me when I was a freshman in high school, don't worry, you're never going to play in the NBA. I grew up with two guys who played in the NBA. You'll never play in the NBA. I can still play basketball, right, Pop, though?
So John, first of all, I'll extend an invite. If you'd like to join us at any point in time, I'm happy to work on your athletic prowess any day of the week. So Exos brings 20 years of data metric-driven sports science to the table for the performance piece of the New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute. What we're basically trying to do, and it comes down to kind of the cumulative of this conversation, we're looking to help prevent injury in athletes, help to correct imbalances so that we, in the long term, see healthier, longer careers in athletes, as well as the fact, and this goes to the sports specialization, kids that are coming into their first sport at 5-6 years old, their parents already have their life planned for them.
They do.
Yeah, 100%. And what we're seeing is repetitive use and load injury hit them earlier and earlier and earlier on.
All right, I'm going to ask you this right here. Is it okay for those parents, and Mario, being a former athletic director, dealt with this, obviously. Is it okay for those parents to have that life plan that their kid is going to be the next Michael Jordan at the age of 5 or 6? I always found that ludicrous because the sport you pick for them may not be their best sport. Might be number 3 or 4 down the list.
Right.
I've talked to student athletes about this who get a scholarship, who play 3 or 4 sports along the way, and they get a scholarship in one sport that may not be the sport they really want to play, but that may be by far their best sport, and they know that's the way to go.
So we can always assume good intentions on the part of the parents, right? They want success for their kids. And the assumption is that the more you put into the single sport, the more that they will improve and that they'll start to get apart from the rest of the competition.
We hope.
Yeah, we hope, right? That's the intention of it. However, what we found is multiple sports help to develop a more well-rounded, more athletic overall athlete, right? And when we do that, when we talk about our sports training here and the sports science we're talking about, it's really saying, hey, let's break this body apart into movements. And if we train movements as opposed to the muscles themselves, what we do is the body adapts in just amazing physiological ways, which improves their overall athleticness to just a much higher level than if they were simply to play their sport. There's also, when we talk about pitchers and throwing injuries, and we've had lots of conversations with Dr. Ahmad on this, the repetitive use and not training deceleration, something as simple as that, or not working on oblique strength, those cause injuries similar to some of the pros we've seen, which can sideline their careers for seasons, if not total. So these are things that we try to address through really functional, good movement-based training and skills. Exos, over 20 years from having this data, has developed a system that's scalable from the youth athlete all the way up to the pro, all the way up to the aging athlete. And when we say athlete, anybody that wants to work on their ability to move better, be stronger, be fitter, and have a better quality of life fits in an athlete bucket for us. We just have different segments. So we have the ability to scale that. What's beautiful here is we have also, because of our proxy to the physicians here and to physical therapy, we have the ability to get our athletes back to work sooner by working on all the non-affected areas in conjunction with the orthopedic care, the surgical care, the physicians that are here, and physical therapy. So for example, someone may have an operation with one of the physicians here, Dr. Ahmad, for example. They'll go into physical therapy, and in our return to sport program or bridge program, we're working on the rest of the athlete to keep them from having secondary injuries or re-injury, right, based on deconditioning, when they get back to, and Mario will give a great example of what worked with his grandson, when they get back to sport, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, they're actually in better physical shape they were than pre-injury, right? So we work really hard to try to have that holistic approach. Exos pioneers that by focusing on more than just the physicality, but also on the mindset and on the movement skill and also on recovery pieces. So that's part of what we do with our athletes as well. And to stress again, athlete is a very broad term. We segment it to make sure that it's appropriate age groups together, but we segment it and say, hey, look, any age, you want to come in here, we're going to help you. We're going to be that beacon, because an athlete that's in his 60s, 70s that's still trying to be competitive and enjoy his life is just as important as well.
Now, I know you know the name Eric Cressie. He has his own sports performance center down in the Palm Beach area in South Florida, and he is the Yankees guy. He had the inside track for the Yankees, obviously, with Corey Kluber, former Cy Young Award winner, getting signed by the Yankees a few weeks ago. Kluber coming back from 2 injury-plagued seasons. He worked at Eric's center down in South Florida during this past offseason. The Yankees investing in him $11 million for the 2021 campaign, hoping he can get back to somewhere close to what he was, and that would be great for the Yankees if he did. But you have guys like Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton on the Yankees, who are 6'7", 6'8", 250 to 275 pounds between the two of them. And I'm sure Dr. Ahmad probably worked together with Eric Cressie on this. But this past offseason, Eric had the two of them on more of a flexibility program, whereas in the past they worked more on weight training and bulking up, which may have led to some of their injury problems the past few seasons. Now we see that difference in approach with Aaron Judge, with Giancarlo Stanton, and Eric Cressie complimented both of them for being open to, receptive to new training methods. And this is what you talk about here with all of this. You can't just do it one way. You have to kind of mix and match every way in a manner that's best for you and not for anybody else.
And think about it from a movement standpoint. Once again, John, not to beat the dead horse here, but you're playing a sport. You're not in a bodybuilding competition, right? So bulking and getting just raw strength is only as good as your body's ability to move through the ranges you need to be functional at your sport. In addition, what we see with a lot of more of the fundamental strength training pieces when you're doing bilateral, so squats, deadlifts, there's often imbalances, which in the long term leads to postural issues that cause injury. So this newer movement where we're focusing on movement-based training as a kind of precursor to your overall athleticism, breaking the athlete down to build them up to a higher level is really the focal point.
When you say, or I'm going to use the word suggest to someone you're working with, let's try this. I know maybe you've never tried it before, and they say, well, why? What do you say in response? How do you counteract that and show them that I think this is going to be good for you, so let's take a shot?
Through different testing methods, we can show them some of their imbalances. Most of our athletes, most of our athletes actually understand at least a base level of how their body's supposed to function. And when you show them gross imbalances and you can prove that to them right in the moment, after that point, they're very receptive to usually listen to you.
So you have all the analytics that everybody has now, right? And you work with the analytics and show them.
And in some cases, it's as simple as try this on one leg and let's see how you do. Right. And that's a very powerful message. If I ask you to do the same amount of weight with your left versus your right leg in, let's say, a split squat, and it's major imbalances there, you know that you're much stronger on one side than the other. Now, in some cases, certain sports, we don't want to overcorrect to the point where it messes with their athleticism, but that's all taken into consideration for the sport that's in front of us. We train sport movement. We don't train the skill piece, but we train the movements to support what the athlete is currently involved in.
Mario Scarano, you've worked with the skill portion, you've worked with the movement portion. You know all about sports analytics. For you and your grandson, who's a pretty good football player up there at John J. East Fishkill in Dutchess County, and hello, Dutchess County, part of our Sharc Creative Radio Network. Mario, Exos has worked for you. It's worked for your grandson. I've seen online a couple of articles how it's worked for your grandson up at John J. East Fishkill with the Patriots there. Talk about those stories for us. You first and then your grandson. How has it worked for you at the age of 72?
Okay. I've been exercising, John, my entire life. I'm one of those crazy 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning athletes.
The one you used to invite me to come 5 a.m. to White Plains High for your exercise, your daily class. But I go to bed at 5 a.m., so I never made it. So
you got it. But to be honest with you, I've been doing it my entire life. And until Michael was nice enough to ask me to take on this position, I came over here and I started to get trained by Jay, and they train movement. What I'm able to do now is I used to lift. When you lift, you try to get stronger. You work with weights and everything. You work with different resistant machinery here, but for all intents and purposes, the movement is key. When he puts us on one leg, the other leg, I now go up steps, come down steps, I squat down, I can get off my knees. I can now put my socks on without having to breathe heavy. You have no idea at my age what I honestly believe that by the time you reach 60, these are the things you should be doing. Coming to a place like this. I work with, and just for insurance purposes, I work with a wonderful gentleman. I won't mention his name, but he's a cardiologist here at New York Presbyterian. So when I'm working out, I have total confidence that if God forbid something would have happened, I have him to take care of me. If not Jay,
so take care
if not Jay. But getting back to my grandson, when I first started here, and this is what separates us, I truly believe, from any other fitness facility. There's a lot of good training facilities throughout Westchester. But what separates us most is that what we have here is what they call that bridge program. Youngster gets hurt, quality athlete gets hurt. He needs to get taken care of by a surgeon. Then he needs to get that physical therapy. Well, that's basically what happened. It must have been the first month I was here, working here. My grandson is, his brother was at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., and he was going down there to do a showcase. They have weekend showcases where college coaches look at these kids. As a 10th grader, he went down there, and it was a rainy Sunday morning in March. He went around right end and slipped, and being 270 pounds, tried to catch himself with his left arm, left hand and arm, and tore his labrum.
He's a defensive tackle, correct?
He's a defensive tackle and offensive tackle. He's a big boy, very skilled too. He was a quarterback until he got too big. Mm-hmm. But in any case, so his dad is driving home from Washington, D.C., calls me up, says, "Pop, Cameron got hurt. What's the story?" And this is one of the perks I have here. What happened? And he explained. I said, I'm going to call up one of the assistants here at New York Presbyterian Sports Center, our facility here, and I got him an appointment that Monday. That Sunday he's driving home. Monday we got an appointment for him. By Thursday he got looked at by Dr. Jobin, and by Thursday he was operated on. After in 4 days, and that's one of the things that I almost create magic because these people are so amazing here. He got operated on, then he went to therapy for 6 weeks, and then after the therapy, he then came to the bridge program. He wanted so badly to be able, from the end of March, to be able to start in his first game in September. And what the bridge program did was they literally trained every aspect, knowing that he had a shoulder issue, and they made sure that they strengthened the shoulder, but at the same time made sure that all the other pieces of his body would be being properly trained. And that was key, because he was able to get started again right off the bat, first game of the season, and that's key, versus a lot of places don't have that. And also I want to share one last thing, because I'm rambling a little bit. In this last NFL draft, last year's draft, right, in the first 4 rounds, 84 athletes were selected in the first 4 rounds that trained at the Exos facility. Wow. in Arizona. They're the real deal. And when I watch the trainers here, it's just so different than your typical training facility that you go to in most cases.
By the way, Mario, you were not rambling. You were telling the story. So I like the facts, the details, what happened. So if that took all night, just keep on going. I want to ask you one thing. What is your grandson's name? Cameron
Kahowitz.
There you go.
Cameron. And he also just got accepted to Catholic University, so that's where he's going.
I thought he was going to be going to Catholic, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to play football there?
Yeah, he wants to play. His brother will be a senior, he'll be a freshman there. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Congratulations on that, and congratulations, Mike and Jay, for making that happen through the hospital and through Exos as well. Now, Mario, something you were talking about, I'm going to shift this over to Jay. Jay, when Mario first started to tell his story and his grandson's story, the thought came to mind, and I get thoughts like this once in a while through the years. Do certain injuries happen because we've maybe not developed a certain part of our body the way we should? Maybe we don't use that part of the body all that much, don't even think about it yet. We should have all body parts fine-tuned, in sync together, and that lessens the opportunities for injuries to occur, happen.
Yeah, I mean, think of it like this, John, right? We obviously have acute injuries where somebody falls, gets hit and stuff like that, things that are not preventable. We see a large majority of injuries, though, based on poor biomechanics, so the body's ability to move through space. That can be coached largely through proper exercise programs. So when we say injury prevention, what we're really saying is really good foundational training and movement skills. So we're teaching them how to move properly. We're getting them to really, with their brain, understand where their body is in space, getting those connections and neurons firing so that they are more likely to have injury-free or reduced injury careers for their sport. And it can be trained, and we start as young as 10 years old working on more how to move posturing pieces. It's a lot less load at that age. It's a lot more about how do you move properly so that we can get rid of the Bambi on ice mechanics that we see a lot with some of the little kids, right? So it's definitely something that, you know, as a parent, you know, we started with our family. I've got 5 kids. We started really young with training our oldest 2 children who are interested in sport already on how to move properly, just very basics, but teach them how to run, teach them how to squat, teach them how to move through space, to rotate, to stop, to start. You know, those deceleration mechanics are as important as the acceleration mechanics and pieces. So it's comprehensive, but yes, it's 100%. You can work on your reduction of injuries through the course of your career.
You talk about being coached and moving through space. Do injuries occur because this does not become second nature to us, and you're teaching all this to become second nature, to do things the right way, where you don't even think about it, you just do it?
Yeah, and it's, once again, you know, we can never guarantee anything in life, right? We can never guarantee, but in general, yeah, the more you put the practice time in, it's like developing your skills, right? The more time you put in developing a skill set, the better that skill set becomes, and the more second nature it becomes, and it becomes less about thinking through my motions and more about thinking through my sports. So you start to be less worried about it, and your body starts to take care of itself.
John, you know, Mario and Jay talked earlier about kids don't play as many different sports all year round.
Right.
That parents are specializing these kids at a younger age. So that's putting pressure on the joints and the muscles, very specific joints and very specific muscles. So they get into overuse issues a whole lot younger than they did 20 years ago, right? And that's what Jay and his team are doing. They're preventing that overuse, and they're developing other muscles around it so the athlete doesn't get injured going forward, and they are prepared. The whole body is prepared, but that's what multiple sports did, is they kept you balanced. But when you specialize at a young age, you get out of balance, and they're putting you back in balance, and they've got 20 years of expertise doing it, and nobody else in Westchester has their level of expertise, and we're proud to have them with us.
Mike, you talk
John,
about...
if I can interject.
I think we're all in agreement on this. You talk about how kids specialize at such a young age. Is it wrong to work with the parents, or do you work with the parents at all to try to get them to realize and understand that they're kids, they're 5, 6, 7 years old, they don't even know what sports they like yet? Better to let them pick and choose what they like, instead of you saying, well, you're going to be the next Al Kaline in right field and have the best throwing arm in baseball, whether you like it or not. And I'm going to get you trained to do that. Are we better off to work with those parents and have them sit down, be part of it too? Have them, Michael, understand that this is not the right way to go, that we have to let them pick and choose on their own, then we can work with them accordingly?
Yeah, I think absolutely that is what needs to happen. You started this discussion by saying every parent thinks their kid is going to make it to the professional level.
Right. Everybody thinks their kid
1%
Jordan. Yeah.
So they gotta play sport that they love and they enjoy. I had a daughter who played softball, and before every season, winter and spring season, or fall and spring season, I would say to her, "Do you want to play?" Right? And and I'd watch her. And as long as she was smiling during that season, I knew it was the right sport for her, right? But I'd ask her, only because we also have to teach our kids, if you start a season, you got to finish a season. You can't quit in the middle. That's a life lesson that we need to teach our kids growing up. And I think the hard work that the Exos puts in on balancing the kids, not only physically, but mentally, it's going to help them as they grow older and they get into high school and they get into college and they get into tough situations and they get into the work world. It's a full body experience that we're providing there for the athletes.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that a little more with Mike here. You bring up about your daughter and not quitting in the middle of the season. One of the top wrestlers in Section 1, not going to say who, he's out of Section 1, off to college now playing lacrosse the last couple of years at a school down in the South. But his father was one of his wrestling and football coaches. He played football, he wrestled, and he played lacrosse too, this young man, in Section 1, not going to say what school. And his father told me that, and this was during wrestling season, and I work public address at this school, that I do. His father told me middle of wrestling season a few years ago, said, my son last night, I walked in 4 o'clock, and the father teaches down in the Yonkers school system. He said, it's not in Yonkers where the school is. And he said, I came in about 4 o'clock. My son's sitting there like doing homework. And I said, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be wrestling practice? And he said, yeah, but I got a paper. It's got to be done in the morning. And he said, wait a second. He said, get over to practice right now, because when you signed up to be on the wrestling team, I don't care that you're one of the best wrestlers in the section. You represent yourself, this family, your school, this entire community, and you have a responsibility to your teammates to be there. And how many of your teammates are in the same class with you and need to get the same paper done by tomorrow morning? Said, you get out of here right now, you go to practice, and if I wake up 3 or 4 in the morning, you got the candlelight burning, and you're working on that paper, that's fine by me, but you've made a commitment. And Mike, do parents make enough of a commitment with their kids, getting them involved in sports science and getting them involved in all of this here to get them going in the right direction for what they need to do? Or again, do we need to sit down with the parents a little more and train them?
And I'm going to make first comments to it. I'm going to ask our 2 experts here to comment, but I think it's probably both. I think there are those who are overcommitting their kids to doing things. And as you said, this is where you're going to go. This is a sport you're going to play and you're going to make it to the majors. And then there's those who are letting the kids decide. And then there's those in between. So I think we have a full range of that. But and I think that is important. But we do have to make sure our parents understand the implications of what they're asking their children to do as they grow older. But, Mary is, an educator for decades. I'd be curious.
As an athletic director, he could pick up on that and tell us a bit more.
Right.
To add to that, Michael, John, every season prior to the season, I would have a parent coaches orientation meeting, a mandatory meeting, and at each one of those, we discuss things like that, And to be honest with you, college, the parents from the time their kids are born, they're working on a college scholarship,
right?
And again, less than 1% get pure academic athletic scholarships. So, you got to kind of put it in their heads when you present it that that's not the case. It's very rarely that's going to happen. And the reality of it is athletes were getting scholarships when they were playing 3 sports, just like they're getting scholarships when they focus on one sport. And focusing on one sport doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be great in that sport. And in most cases, that's still not the case. So, to be honest with you, educating the parents, but today it's really tough. I got to a point in my life, and I coached for many years, where I thought the best place to coach would be at an orphanage. You didn't have to deal with.
I know
what would you have to deal with.
We have many friends around Section 1 and the lower Hudson Valley who made other career choices because they decided they were not willing to deal with different things anymore. And I have to respect that, because after a certain point, I guess it's not enjoyable and not worth it anymore. Now, Jay, obviously, too, talking about the parents and their involvement in all of this, and Mike said, obviously, you and Mario could pick up more on this, too. Do you sit down with the parents of kids and lay out that game plan for the kids in a manner in which you're showing the parent that this is what's best for your son or daughter. You and I may not think that's the case right now, but watch down the road after the work we do together. You'll see this is what was best.
You know, one of the great parts about Exos is we are 100% committed to the healthy habit development of these kids. And we will absolutely have those conversations with parents. Now, you obviously have to be very tactful with how you approach it, because parents, obviously, once again, they want the best for their kids ultimately. And part of the balance is we have to come in and say, hey, look, part of this is health related, right? So what we're doing is we're instilling healthy long-term habits that will spill over past the athletic phase from organized sports into their adult life. Right now, in the course of the last year, we have seen more children with bad postural development issues based on the fact they're all working from home on Chromebooks when they're 6. Like, I have a kindergartner. She'd never been on a Chromebook before, and now she's on it 5 days a week, right? So when we talk about consulting the parents and saying, hey, look, you have to work on undoing what the remote schooling is doing to your children for health concerns. Pause sports for a second and just say this is going to be a massive increase after we have gotten through the COVID pandemic with the obesity crisis is going to fly off the handle. So when we talk to parents, yes, sports, very important. College scholarships, very important. Finishing what you started, cannot stress that piece enough. Part of that is a lifelong commitment to the health of your kids until they pick up the mantle themselves and work through it. And absolutely, we will talk to parents. Absolutely, we will reinforce that. If there's something that we're uncomfortable with from a health perspective and we think that there's something, we will have the conversation, even if it's a hard one, with the parents, because we go into a little bit the mindset of the athlete as well. Yeah. And there are kids that we've seen here already that are in burnout phase because they're processing everything that's going on in the world right now too. So it's a holistic approach to it. And honestly, the fact that we're working on the movement and the postural piece has become that much more important over the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Here on Westchester Talk Radio, the Sports Report, I'm John Marino. We are joined by Mike Fosina, President, New York Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital in Bronxville. Also, Jay Hutchinson from Exos Sports Science, and Mario Scarano, one-time athletics director at White Plains, New Rochelle, and also at Woodlands and Greenberg High Schools. Mario, New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute, Columbia Orthopedics in Scarsdale is where he is nowadays, working with the community and community outreach. Mike, Jay brought up an interesting point about COVID and its effect on all of this. From where you sit, how has COVID affected sports performance and the hospital business in general also, too, in the way that, for example, your facility has to deal with patients now in this new world?
Well, it's had a pretty big impact, right? So sports were shut down for almost a year. So what Jay and his team had to do is to keep athletes in shape for when the season started up again. And that's what they needed to be able to do. From a hospital perspective, it has led to much more telehealth innovation. So before the COVID pandemic, very few doctor visits were through telehealth, right? Less than 4%. Because you know what? Because that wasn't accepted by the public, right? During the height of the pandemic, it was probably about 85%. And now we're down to about 20%, which the water will find its level. It'll probably remain somewhere around 15 to 20% because certainly doctors at times need to put their hands on patients to study them and examine them regardless of the specialty. And there are others that are visits that can be done through telehealth. But we redesigned our whole process of registering patients and getting in the hospital and out of the hospital. So the least number of people interact with the patient as possible because we want to keep the patient safe, we want to keep the family safe, and we want to keep the hospital safe. And we have all of the protocols that have been outlined by the CDC and the Department of Health, and that we are implementing them here. Plus, we've done some other innovative things to make sure patients and families feel safe. And they do. And when patients come into the hospital, they come into our physician office, they tell us they feel safe. The exam rooms are not, the waiting rooms are not as crowded as they used to be. The lobbies are not as crowded. The elevators are not as crowded because we redesigned the schedule. We redesigned the workflow to keep people separated. The most important thing I want to make sure is that people understand they shouldn't delay care. They should feel safe going to their doctor and feel safe going to their hospital and make sure that they are getting the care that they need because we have all of the protocols in place in our hospitals and all our doctor offices, and even in the Sports Performance Institute. So it's an important thing that people are going to and getting the care that they need.
How much has this pandemic affected people not getting the proper care? Jay talked about kids with posture, with obesity, and more. And that was early on in the pandemic. Donald Trump, when he was still president, obviously brought that up about the effects medically on people could be worse than what COVID could do to you. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a medical person, but there was much controversy and discussion about that. If you delay care and say, well, it's because of COVID, I don't feel comfortable going out in public or being in a public space or office, how do you counteract that to someone who says that to you? How do you make that point to them that you got to get in and get looked at? And I'll preface this by saying I was in that category until last summer, where my doctor called me up and said, look, it's been over a year. I know, you have some trepidation about some things. Let's at least get together online. He gave me a date and time, said you can make it. We sit down, we talk. I want to run through some things with you. Just, it's what I do, what I have to do to make sure you say everything's okay. I'll be the one to determine that. And we did that. And then something came up. I had to have surgery for something for a hernia back in November, which had gotten to a point where we had to do it. I had trepidation about going to the hospital. I think I overcame that, and we did what we had to do at that point. So, Mike, how do you talk to someone and let them know that it's okay?
Well, it's just as he said, right? The first place is start engaging the discussion. Don't avoid it and don't sit at home. Start engaging discussion with your doctor. And if a patient is uncomfortable, they can have that telehealth visit with the doctor. The doctor can explain the safety precautions that are put in place to make sure that they are safe. I think you hear about wearing the mask, washing your hands, and social distancing are very important, and we're going to continue that for a while. There is light at the end of the tunnel as we get more and more people vaccinated, and that's a great thing. You see the positivity rate is dropping in and around the New York metropolitan area as more people get vaccinated. It'll start to warm up, and if you remember last summer, it slowed down a little bit because people were outside and they were separated.
Right.
And so by the time next winter comes, we'll have many, many millions more people vaccinated. And so we are moving in the right direction from a healthcare environment and from a public health perspective. But what the healthcare industry has learned through this past year has been remarkable. The amount of innovation that has occurred is truly remarkable. And the innovation is just starting. We're just beginning. We're on a renaissance in healthcare on innovation. And what we do today is going to look very different than what we're doing 5 years from now. And New York Presbyterian is right in the front of that. We're one of the top hospitals in the country. We're right in the middle of that, helping make those innovations happen.
Now, telehealth, like you said, a big part of all this. Now, after vaccinations happen for most of the population, and hopefully we get that herd immunity, how much will telehealth still be a part, even a big part of all this, or will it go back to being a minor part?
No. I think it still will be a pretty significant part of care for the patients. We can do remote monitoring at home nowadays. There are many more patients who want home care.
Right.
They don't want to go into a rehab facility or a subacute facility, so they want home. And when they go home, we can monitor them from home. You can monitor their diabetes from home. You can, post-surgery, you can do your post-op evaluation from home. So there's many things that we can do electronically now that a year, 18 months ago, we couldn't do.
Jay Hutchings, talk about Dr. Chris Ahmad, the Yankees team physician, and the role he plays at Exos Sports Science. When you have a guy like that working with you, you can't get any better.
100%. And Dr. Ahmad, one of the visionaries behind this process, has worked hand in hand with us to start to actually preemptively develop protocols to diagnose the potential for injury ahead of time and treat it ahead of time for athletes. Just a very dynamic personality, very impressive individual, very, very intelligent, understands what's at stake if we don't address the injury issues that are plaguing these athletes, understands better because he sees it on a day in and day out basis with his team and treats it on a day in and day out basis. So his leadership at this site and with our teams here has just been absolutely incredible, and just it's a privilege to work with him, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
John, you know what's impressive? What's impressive about this Columbia Orthopedic Group? They don't take you to surgery for the sake of surgery. And if you listen to them talk, they tell people they don't need surgery more than they have them do surgery, right? So they're giving you an honest medical assessment about what you need. They're not bringing you to surgery if you don't need it. And that is truly something special that our Columbia orthopedists do, that they are really, they turn people away and they send them to rehab, medical rehab, or they send them to J for sports performance before they would do surgery. And it's a pretty special thing. And they're a remarkable group of surgeons.
Mike, is that a good way to pick a doctor, that somebody is pushing surgery on you and you say, well, maybe not, and then he pushes or she pushes over and over? Is that a good way to know that maybe I'm not in the right place?
Yeah, maybe when you get into that type of environment, it may be worthwhile getting a second opinion and see what somebody else has to say.
Mario.
Yeah, John. Yeah, I have to totally agree with Mike, because I had after working out for like about a year and working out really hard 5 days a week, I ended up wearing down my right hip. The sports I played, and so I needed to have it replaced. I went to Dr. Taka, who did the operation, and he before it took like 4 months for me to convince him that I wanted to get the surgery. He really wanted to try every other avenue before he went that route. A couple of shots to see if that would work, some therapy, some physical therapy to see if that would work. And then after those 4 months, I said, Doc, you promised me that you would do it. And he did. And I walked out of the hospital the same day that I got operated on.
Wow.
And a month and a half later, I was training with Jay again, full force.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mario, in your role as a community outreach person,
right?
Tell us what you do. I know you go around to different high schools and different athletic facilities, sit down with athletic directors, maybe some former colleagues of yours, and talk about all of this.
Well, I think I was originally recruited and asked if I was interested in the job because of my connections over the years throughout Section 1. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I still have many friends in that world, that Section 1 world, and a few of the local colleges as well. So one of the things that Jay and I would do is we'd set up appointments with our athletic directors, did a number of presentations before the COVID hit, did a number of presentations to the coaches as well, sharing with them exactly what we have to offer at our facility. I also, in the business community, you never hear the word Exos, because in most cases, just like here at New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute, it's powered by Exos. It takes on the name of the company that basically is hiring you. So Google, Citibank, Intel, Adidas, and many other corporate companies throughout the country hire Exos trainers, certified trainers to run their facilities. The healthcare systems, you got Mayo, you got UCLA Health, Innova Clinic, AAPR, as well as New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute. The municipalities, we've been reaching out to the New Rochelle Fire Department, Police Department, Eastchester Fire Department, because there are individuals there that could end up becoming our clients as well. And then I reached out to, by the time I finished, over 100 individuals that literally could use this training just to be able to move. Remember, it's mind-boggling when they train movement. I have a 69-year-old cardiologist, roly-poly little guy, sweetheart, that it amazes me what he's able to do now. After he had a heart attack, by the way, when he comes in and does what he does, because the training is for anyone. If you want to become an elite athlete, the training's there for it. But if you want to become a weekend warrior, or just an individual that wants to feel healthy, wants to be able to put his socks on or squat down and be able to get up, and you're in the garden and you're on your knees, to be able to get up without having to look for something to grab onto, that's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah.
And so that in all those cases, and as well as some club teams, Westchester Roadrunners has been interested, the Rockland Boulders. Westchester Skating is someone that we're possibly able to work with as soon as this COVID is over. There's so much out there, and I think that what separates us more than anything else, and that's why I love this job so much. What separates us much is that we're connected with the healthcare system. So that really is a full circle, beautiful full circle. And so far, I'm having a great time. I can't believe it. I'm getting younger rather than older.
That I can tell. You talk about the Rockland Boulders, the minor league baseball team in Rockland County, too. Yep, they play over at the stadium up along the Hudson River. Is that in Pomona?
No, it's Jesus. It's in Wapacha. Isn't it in Wapacha Falls?
That's the Dutchess County baseball team plays up
That's
there.
A Dutchess County.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know. It was on a list of things that we take care of, so that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, they're in that stadium, I believe, in Pomona, right? North Rockland High School is where it is.
The most ironic thing, I go in to see a doctor in the doctor's office, and the first question I ask him is, what kind of shape are you in? And then, well, you're not. Well, you got to remember, there's a couple things you've got to understand. One, in the stressful job I had for years, one of the things that always stuck with me, and this is what, it wasn't Confucius that said this is Mario Scarano. He who fatigues his body through exercise brings peace to his or her mind. You have no idea how much exercise can relieve that stress. We're trying to get the president of Lawrence Hospital to come on in and do some exercise because it would really be good for him. And the other quote, 15th century philosopher Edward Stanley said, if you can't find time for bodily exercise, you will find time for illness. And those are two key things.
Yeah, very interesting. By the way, you talk about talking to New Rochelle Fire, our old friend Lou over there, I guess, at the fire department.
Yeah.
So
No, Lou's retired. Now we have Andrew Sandar, another sweetheart. Lou's my neighbor. He retired a couple years back.
Send him my best when you talk to him. Okay?
And do you realize, John, that Michael Fosina has a famous father, and he comes from a really famous family in New Rochelle? Did you know Joe Fosina?
Yeah.
Joe Fosina is a legend. Do you understand? They have a field named after him. Yeah. He's a Yankee. He's part of the Yankee legends.
Yep. All right. So we got all prominent people here with us. And Mario, to display your prominence, by the way, we talk Section 1 to show your influence around the lower Hudson Valley. And when you go out to talk to athletic directors and your former colleagues about all of this, we talk Section 1. We're talking all of Westchester County, all of Rockland County, all of Putnam County, and the lower half of Dutchess County too, which the lower half of Dutchess is tremendously connected to the upper half of Dutchess, which is Section 9. You got those schools in Ulster and Sullivan and in Orange County too. So you're covering a wide swath of this lower Hudson Valley area.
What I found, John, which it's really interesting, because of the COVID and because a lot of the schools were closed down and because our facility wasn't 100% in operation, I found that I was, I wanted to earn my pay. So I ended up doing a lot of referral. So whenever I was out talking to people, I'd find out that some of them were injured or they had some medical issues that needed taken care of. And one of my perks is I was able to get them if they had the proper insurance coverage, and most of them did, to get a quick appointment with one of our doctor specialists there. And so in most cases, most kids, if they're within more than 45 minutes, they're not probably going to come down to train with us because it really is a chore. But many of them, as far up as Stormville and Wappinger Falls, have come down for their medical treatments because they're getting the best. They come here. If the Yankees can get rehabbed here, their kids can get rehabbed here.
Right. And they're coming down from Dutchess County. They're coming down to Scarano.
Dutchess County. Yeah.
Yep, no doubt about that.
There's been five patients from Dutchess County that came down and had surgeries down here.
So, Jay, you have a wide swath of people to work with, obviously, too, from all around this area. Yeah. That keeps you going, keeps you hopping, right, Jay?
I love it. I'm getting younger, John. I'm getting younger.
Mario, I can tell you're getting younger. So, Westchester.
You got to come down and work out with us.
One day when the pandemic comes to an end, I will. I'm very locked down.
This is a very safe place. Our protocols are all in place here, John.
I know.
You ought to, John, you ought to see the number of athletes that are coming out of the true high school or college athletes that are coming in there and the work that are doing. Even if you don't go work out, just go see what they're doing.
Just-
It's
yeah, just see what they're
incredibly
doing. Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, that
And
I can do. Yeah.
more younger athletes, high school and college athletes, are coming there, and
Right.
because they also want to be with other top flight athletes,
Right.
and that success breeds success.
That brings up an interesting point before we wrap here, Jay. Athletes wanting to be with other top flight athletes. I think, and Mario can back this up, I think when kids get to college sometimes and they expect to be the super duper star of whatever team they're playing at for whatever school, they come to realize eventually that all their other teammates were, they wonder why, well, why am I fourth string instead of an All-American? They come to realize that the kids they're playing with, their new teammates, were all the best players at their respective position in the hometown that they came from, which is something that I think college recruiters don't point out too often. They just present the rosiest picture possible to kids. Come with us, and you'll be the next superstar. And kids get a rude awakening when they see that. But Mike points out about how top quality, top tier athletes want to be around other top tier athletes, and you have to gear your programs accordingly.
Yep. So the Exos system allows for us to work movements and have add-ins for sports specific. And to speak to Mike's point, we know iron sharpens iron, right? And we also know that hard work beats talent when talent won't work hard.
Right.
So what we do is we create an environment where athletes from different sports can compare strengths and weaknesses that are sport related often and development related, and still all have a great workout while they're next to different athletes of different sports and different genders as well. So we create this environment, and we're able to, within the confines of our system, staying within our programming, we program out for 4 weeks at a time. We're able to provide balanced athlete-centered workouts regardless of sport, and still work on things like acceleration, multi-directional speed, power development, mobility, flexibility, things of that nature.
And as a further selling point, Mario, I know your old friend Dan Rickey, great coach up at Ossining High School, legendary girls basketball coach. Half of Gino Auriemma's UConn team is by Dan Rickey over at Ossining High School. So many great players went from Dan at Ossining over to UConn and Gino Auriemma. And Jay points out that the old expression, hard work beats talent, when talent doesn't work hard. When I inducted Dan into the Westchester Sports Hall of Fame a few years back, I happened to be the master of ceremonies for that, as Mario knows.
You do a great job there, John.
Thank you. Dan, in his acceptance speech, stepped up to the microphone, and one of the first things he said was, what I teach my kids, no matter how talented our kids are, and you see the results of the players we produce from our program at Ossining, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that about sums all of this up and what this is all about for any athlete, whether it be an individual or the so-called weekend warrior or a top flight pro. If you're not willing to work hard, especially when it comes to training your body, really there's no sense in doing this. So I think I'll wrap in conclusion with that. And Mike, I think you can speak to that if you're not going to do it the right way, as we wrap up here, maybe this is not for you, but if you're looking to do this the right way, come see us.
Exactly, that's right. And you can find them on 693 Scarsdale Road, White Plains Road in Scarsdale. That's where they're located, and it's an impressive place.
As we wrap all this up, I'm going to run each one of you down one by one here and talk about your contact info. Mike Fosina, President, New York Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital in Bronxville. For anyone who would like to get in touch with you about whatever the reason might be, Exos Sports Science, about the COVID pandemic, about medicine, about the future of medicine and doctoring as we hopefully step out of this with the help of vaccines real soon, how can someone get in touch with you?
They could just call my office at 914-787-1600.
Repeat that one more time.
914-787-1600.
The old days of radio, they taught us in the early days when I got in the business in the late 70s, when you read a phone number off or an address on the air, repeat it twice, if not 3 times, because you cannot expect people to remember it if you say it just once. So I know the business got out of that pretty much through the years to save time and doing commercials, but I try to stick to that old adage as best as possible. And for you, Jay Hutchinson, Exos Sports Science, for someone who would like to talk with, consult with you, maybe sit down, go over what the options and possibilities and benefits might be, how can we contact you?
Sure. So first of all, we're in facility from 5:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Walk on in, say hi. If not, 914-750-4690. I'll say it again for you, John. 914-750-4690.
And with people like you and Erica Cressie and Dr. Chris Ahmad and the things you teach, we can look for a more flexible Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton this season, right? And hopefully they won't be on the injury list as often. Hoping for
Just
that.
crossed.
About that. And my old pal, Mario Scarano, you know, you're missed over in New Rochelle and White Plains, at Woodlands, over at the Con Ed Sports Award luncheons, and all throughout Section 1 and the lower Hudson Valley and tri-state area. Hope we get you back one day. I know I spoke to you a few years back saying, Mario, you sure you don't want to do this anymore? But you said for you at that point it was the right time to move into something else, and you moved into the right thing with New York Presbyterian Sports Performance Institute and Columbia Orthopedics over in Scarsdale. Mario, how can we get in touch with you on an everyday working basis?
My number would be area code 914-943-9119. Let me repeat that. 914-943-9119. I'm the gentleman that you want to contact if you'd like to come in and do a demonstration lesson just to see what it's all about. Or if you'd like to come in and just see the facility. We have the state-of-the-art fitness equipment, the most sophisticated in the world. And I would love to have you come in because you will not regret. If you want to get the best possible training and then become the best you can possibly be, come on in and give me a call, and I'll set that up for you. Thank you so much.
And this goes for all high school coaches and even CYA and youth coaches, athletic directors like you used to be, and for college coaches and athletic directors. I know as we get out of this pandemic, you'll sit down and talk with them more and more, and they can give you a call and come in and talk with you too, Mary.
And John, if those of you that would like to be able to put your socks on without not having any problems whatsoever, you can come in as well because we train you as well. Right, Jay?
What if you stand
Absolutely.
against the wall putting your socks on? I guess
No, but see, what happens is once you get trained, believe me, when they train movement, John, you'll be able to do it with no problem.
Right. And I've always been a big believer that age is a number. You have to do things to keep yourself rolling and going. I'm going to point out my father is 92 years old and still exercises at the age of 92. And I asked him, so how did you get this far? I said, look at me, my exercise, my diet, the things I do. Diet is key and critical to him. And he said to me last year, he said, maybe you should start to look into some of the things at least that I do.
Come on in.
With this pandemic, I took him up and I've lost 50 pounds from 195 to almost down to 145. So, you know, I watched closely what he did through the years and what he still does. And he is a fanatic about all of this. Now, he was a great star athlete in his day, which, you know, I played hard. We could say that about me. So like he said, you will never play in the NBA. So good warrior and still like to be. At the age of 64, I'm looking to catch my next touchdown pass as my next exploit. Fool a young guy out there on the field who he's old. I'm not going to have to cover him and slip behind him and catch a touchdown pass. Hopefully you can do that next fall when we can play some real football again, I think. Everybody, thank you for joining us here on Westchester Talk Radio, the Sports Report, produced by Sharc Creative and made possible by our friends at Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities right through April of 2021. Wartburg Healthcare and Rehabilitation over in Mount Vernon. Got to say hello to them and thank them too. Also, Leah Caro, our good friend over at Park Sterling Realty in Bronxville, and Michael Labriola, Landscape Design and Construction in Armonk. We thank you one and all. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube.